Good morning, everyone. I call to order the November 13th, 2025 special meeting of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here in the boardroom and on Zoom. And also to everyone watching on the live stream video. Our first item on today's agenda is to act on the university's new strategic plan, Elevate Extraordinary 2030. Joining President Cunningham to present this item is Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, Ryan Smeezing, and President Cunningham. Would you like to begin?
Thank you, Chair Hipsch and members of the Board of Regents for your, sorry. I have the wrong remarks in here, folks. Here we go. Okay, here we go. It was an exciting morning at the breakfast downstairs, so we have to get reconfigured. So thank you for your patience. Okay. Well, it is an exciting morning with this, so thank you, Chair Hipsch. Since our university-wide next event in early October, we have continued introducing the strategic roadmap to student, faculty, staff, alumni, ambassadors, community members, and friends of the university. Across campuses, colleges, and units, and at a variety of events in Minneapolis and recently in Washington, D.C., it has been enthusiastically received. As we consider the unique and collective strengths across our university, a university that is the energy for change, we are confident in our collective ability to move the needle on these 5 imperatives and make a meaningful difference for Minnesota, for the nation, and the world. And now it's my pleasure to turn over to our Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, Ryan Smeezing, to discuss our rollout plan for Elevate Extraordinary 2030 after, of course, your hopeful approval.
Thank you, President Cunningham, Chair Hipsch, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'm thrilled that we have arrived at this point after months of work, thousands of points of input, and countless drafts. Today, we share the final version with one minor revision from your October presentation. We simply clarified one of our focus areas to be more inclusive of the arts and design. Pending the Board of Regents approval, our work turns to launching and implementation. Our university marketing communications team will release a new website and is developing comprehensive strategy to introduce this plan and its potential impact internally and, importantly, externally to the people of Minnesota and beyond in the coming days, weeks, and months. In terms of what is next with implementation, we continue our focus building the teams under each of the focus areas that will bring to life the words in this document. Led by 2 individuals, each team will have representation from colleges, campuses, and units, and that team will operationalize the key early initiatives. Keeping in mind that we built a strengths-based plan, some of those teams have been working for some time and are ready to finalize and implement strategies in the very near future. Next month, we'll bring us a draft set of measures for your review. In developing these measures, we continued building on the work of the steering committee and all that contributed to the plan as we look forward to what will be different in 5 years. Campus leaders are already working to develop their plans that ladder up to the 20 focus areas of the roadmap. This process may look slightly different on each campus. However, the outcome will be the same. What is the campus doing and prioritizing that aligns with the focus areas, or what could it be doing? We feel confident that with this input and adding in the colleges and units in the coming weeks and months, we'll identify even more extraordinary work that advances this plan, but more importantly, impacts the state, nation, and the world. As I conclude, I want to highlight the fact that an executive leadership team is in place to oversee both the launch and implementation and monitor our progress as we move forward. As well, work is underway to help all of us understand what it means to elevate extraordinary. And we look forward to continuing to share with you and engage you in learning more about what that means at the University of Minnesota. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Vice President Smeezing, and thank you for all of your work on this. It's really important work. So before we turn to discussion, is there a motion to approve the Elevate Extraordinary 2030 University Strategic Plan? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's been motion and second. Yeah, is there any discussion? I just want to start by saying I love this plan. I love everything about it. I love that it's very strategic, but it's also very mission focused for the University of Minnesota. And I love the fact that you got so many people involved in making the plan. It's really the state's plan. and it encompasses the whole state, and it's for the whole state. So thank you for doing that. I mean, that's all of the people, so thank you. Does any other discussion?
I just want to underscore, Chair, your remarks, just noting the multifaceted aspects of the plan, how it touches all fabrics and DNAs of what we know as the mission and values of our university, and really setting the future for what we expect to happen. And so thank you for all your work.
I would also underscore your remarks and Regent Mohammed's remarks. I want to thank the teams that have worked on this, as well as all the folks across the university who've provided input. And I also want to thank our leadership, our president, for really working hard to develop this great plan.
Okay, I don't see any further discussion, so we'll take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. The motion is approved. Thank you, and thanks very much. So look forward to the next steps.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
So our second item is to review and act on the resolution related to the medical school private practice plan. I invite President Cunningham and Executive Vice President Provost Ritter, Executive Vice President for Finance and Operations Goldman, and Dr. Keith Gezzi, Managing Director for Alvarez and Marshall, to present this item. President Cunningham, would you like to begin?
Thank you, Chair Hipsch and Board of Regent members, for your strong and enduring support of our University of Minnesota Medical School. The events that have transpired this week are deeply concerning to me, as well as to many members of our faculty, staff, and students that I have been hearing from in the last 24 hours. As we have said here before, our guiding North Star for any agreement is that it provides a path to have a thriving medical school and health science schools for the state, for the health of the state, the whole state. My team will speak shortly on the proposed agreement and why, with our still limited information, what we know, this proposed agreement is not a path forward to ensure that Minnesota has a strong medical school for decades to come. But first, I want to speak to the faculty directly about the troubling issues of this process and our values that we hold, and the lack of transparency here in the process. As you know, we at the medical school recruit faculty nationally to the University of Minnesota. Our faculty come from all over the world and nation to work here for the University of Minnesota Medical School and for the Maroon and Gold, to teach students, conduct life-saving research, and deliver care to patients from across the state and beyond. After the university recruits them here, they are assigned to work with our Board of Regents designated and approved clinical practice plan, UMP. I want to acknowledge and thank our health sciences and medical faculty for how they've managed and worked through a very difficult time of uncertainty. In addition to all the other pressures facing healthcare and higher education, this uncertainty has been a large additional stress. Despite this, our faculty and health science schools and chairs have continued to do outstanding work and sustain their extraordinary commitment to our mission. I also want to acknowledge that I and my leadership team and the board see the challenges of the situation for faculty and appreciate all that you do every day for our patients, for our university, and for Minnesota. With that faculty role, you're part of a university and a medical school community. And in this community, as we have spoken often at this table and with this board, of shared governance, the critical role of faculty, staff, and student voices, and the need for transparency and process and stakeholder input. The fact that we have these meetings so publicly is very evidence of the public transparency for which we are expected to uphold all decisions at this university. These are our values. This is what we've been firmly committed to. We know and fully appreciate and recognize the challenges of the health ecosystem and finances. To overcome those challenges, we've committed to work collaboratively with our faculty who are a part of UMP to meet the moment, while holding true to our firm commitment in shared governance and faculty consultation. In keeping with these values, I want to share with you the process that we undertook with our faculty. Last January, I and my team worked for 3 months with faculty consultative groups, committees, and then UMP management to design a new governance process for UMP physicians to provide closer alignment with the medical school, which should allow for stronger financial support for UMP and allow us to be unified and united in both difficult negotiations as well as in a difficult healthcare climate. The proposed governance changes at UNP were faculty-led, transparently, broadly shared across platforms with all of the medical school faculty in town halls, broad communications, follow-up Q&A. While such a process is complex and at times consuming, it is keeping with our university and faculty values of shared governance and how we expect governance changes to happen, transparency. In contrast, I'm deeply concerned, and I hear from others how concerned they are, that the proposed agreement announced yesterday, which would radically shift UMP governance and management even further than what we had proposed with the faculty over the past year, for which they still had questions, all occurred without any consultation or input from faculty or staff, all of it without any level of transparency behind closed doors. Furthermore, our board, our university leadership, and the faculty of our schools and health science schools leadership and faculty have a right to know what the implications of a proposed agreement proposal would be on the university and our ability to fulfill our mission and commitment to Minnesota, and how it would affect their work, both their clinical work and their academic work. Chair Hipsch and the board, your advocacy on behalf of the university is critically important and deeply appreciated. Your advocacy on behalf of the university is critically important and deeply appreciated. The university understands and respects your obligations under the Constitution of the state of Minnesota to determine the policies and position of the University of Minnesota Medical School. What the University of Minnesota Medical School delivers each day to Minnesota can't be replaced. It is truly one of Minnesota's most precious, vital, and essential assets. I've shared this before, but consider what's transpired, it bears repeating. The university trains 70% of Minnesota's healthcare professionals, and health systems across Minnesota depend on us to teach and train the future healthcare professionals all across our state. We serve 1 million patients, including Minnesotans from all 87 counties. We're deeply committed to and engaged in rural health and want to expand this commitment. We are constantly finding better and faster ways to translate our laboratory research into clinical trials for patients, which are often the only path to new treatments and cures. What our faculty and staff deliver through University of Minnesota Medical School is life-changing and life-saving. We cannot allow the interests of a single regional provider and the management of a single physician management group acting outside of our university values and our faculty process of transparency and shared governance to be put ahead of what's best for all of Minnesota. So thank you for the action that you're taking today to protect our medical school and health science schools for our state. Before I close, it's important to set the record straight on some key items. In his remarks to the Board of Regents last month, the Attorney General thanked us for our commitment to our ongoing and continued negotiations, quote, around the partnership between the University of Minnesota Physicians, and Fairview. And this partnership is foundational as we forge a path going forward for academic health in Minnesota, end quote. There have been reports that somehow we have walked away at some time from negotiations. So let me be very clear, we did not walk away from these negotiations at any point. In September, the strategic facilitator declared an impasse and sent the university and all parties home. We did not walk away. The strategic facilitator then called the other parties together. We repeatedly requested that a 3-party negotiation would yield the best results for the state of Minnesota, and yet the strategic facilitator continued to exclude us for 7 weeks in the same way that they excluded Essentia. Similarly, as I mentioned, there had been reports that Essentia had walked away, a similar pattern from negotiations. To the contrary, the strategic facilitator excluded Essentia from the process this summer, never once bringing the 3 parties together. We also repeatedly requested from our UMP colleagues that we meet, review terms, begin negotiations, and with the strategic facilitator or without, and we were not, this was excluded. The university has been and remains strongly committed to good faith negotiations across all parties, as outlined in the Attorney General's original charge. I'd now welcome Dr. Keith Gezzi, Executive Vice President Goldman, Provost Ritter, and Chair Hips to share their perspectives as well.
Chair Hipsch, Board of Regents, and President Cunningham, I'm an academic emergency physician by training and practice. I previously served as Chief Operating Officer and/or Chief Medical Officer of 2 academic medical centers and Chief Executive Officer of 2 health systems. My expertise includes financial and operational turnarounds, performance improvement, mergers and acquisitions. I work primarily with academic medical centers and universities. I've been advising the university and the medical school for the past 3 years. The Board of Regents previously designated UMP as the clinical practice of the University of Minnesota Medical School almost 30 years ago. As the designated clinical practice, UMP is a management services organization that supports the delivery of care within the medical school with the oversight by the university. First, let me say the university only learned about the details of the agreement between Fairview and UMP several days ago. This is alarming and inappropriate because we all know the devil is in the details. Nonetheless, I'll try to summarize my understanding of the agreement as it has been shared with us. There is seemingly a transfer of primary control and oversight for UMP from the University of Minnesota to Fairview, a private company. I say seemingly. As we understand it, based on what we have seen and been told, the proposed agreement includes the following. The 3 university representatives on the Fairview board would be eliminated, and UMP would instead nominate 2 representatives. The number of Fairview nominated directors on the UMP board would increase from 1 to 3. The clinical enterprise would ultimately report to a triad, a 3-person executive group, of the Fairview Chief Operating Officer and Fairview Chief Medical Officer and the UMP CEO. That group would ultimately be accountable to the Fairview CEO. The role of the dean of the medical school in the clinical enterprise would be diminished significantly or totally eliminated as compared to the current agreement. And important administrative and clinical functions that are now under the management of UMP would switch to the exclusive control of Fairview. Perhaps most importantly, UMP representatives and the strategic facilitator assured the university that they were only discussing clinical and operational matters, and that academic matters would be resolved in direct discussions with the university. However, academic, financial, or mission support, faculty appointments, and education and research are clearly academic matters and have been addressed by the parties in what has been described as a binding agreement. These clearly should fall under the governance of you, the Board of Regents, and be managed by the university and medical school administration. Why do changes in oversight and responsibility outlined in this proposed agreement matter to patients and to Minnesota? Because the mission should not be bought with money. In other situations where the practice plan has moved under control of the clinical enterprise and away from the university and medical school, academic prominence and NIH rankings have suffered. In those cases, physicians are pressed to see more patients and to be more productive, squeezing out time for education and research in the process. And with academic support to the medical school decreasing in parallel, the education and research missions suffer dramatically. One only has to look to several medical schools who have made this change, with my alma mater at Georgetown as a prime example, to see the disappointing results. Thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective today. I'm pleased to turn to University of Minnesota EVP for Finance and Operations, Greg Goldman.
Chair Hipsch, Board of Regents, President Cunningham, and distinguished colleagues. I share your deep concern about this proposed agreement and want to specifically address the financial structure of the proposed agreement. It is not what has been portrayed. The proposed agreement provides insufficient investment in the University of Minnesota Medical Center and insufficient levels of academic support that would fail to sustain the medical school. Let me explain. Fairview's reported $1 billion investment over 10 years in the University of Minnesota Medical Center and the Clinics and Surgery Center is grossly inflated because more than half of that amount is already budgeted for ongoing routine maintenance and replacement of current equipment that is worn out. It is not all new money. The amount also does not take into account the historical underinvestment by Fairview for the past decade, which has been analyzed to be approaching $600 to $700 million. Also, the proposed agreement, the university has no voice in the investment and how it's being made. It will be determined by UMP and Fairview alone. This is especially concerning given Fairview has a track record of consistently and significantly investing in their own programs and their own facilities while underinvesting in the University of Minnesota Medical School and Medical Center. And services to Minnesotans are desperately needed, including the modernization of the NICU that affords patients and caregivers the high-level care they require and deserve. The level of academic support guaranteed within the agreement will not be enough to sustain the medical school. It cuts it in half. Furthermore, funding is tied to Fairview's financial performance metrics that they have not achieved in the past decade. At best, it's speculative, and at worst, it destabilizes the medical school, providing upwards of $50 million less than the current levels of support. The agreement also has UMP becoming a clinical arm of Fairview with incentives aligned around financial performance. Fairview and UMP retain the clinical revenue flow, funds that have historically supported the teaching and research missions of the medical school. All the funds would flow between Fairview and UMP. There is no direct relationship, including support defined to the medical school. This takes the dean, who has academic expertise, out of the role of overseeing funds flows for education and research and places it in the control of the UMP CEO under the management of Fairview. This threatens the very professional training, mentoring, and the advancement of life-enhancing discoveries upon which our state depends. To be more specific, we're currently receiving approximately $100 million in academic support. Of this amount, currently, $67 million comes to us directly from Fairview, with the balance by way of the dean's tax. Under this agreement with UMP, the $50 million guaranteed in academic support, along with any of the additional funds tied to performance, would flow to UMP, not to the medical school. While UMP may say they will pass the funds on to us, from where I sit as CFO for the university and charged by the Regents and our president to manage financial risk, I worry greatly how we can be sure we will receive these funds and not have them kept by UMP. We need to remember, this year UMP unilaterally decided to increase the tax to departments, creating extreme financial hardship for many of our academic departments within the medical school. This is an untenable plan that would fundamentally diminish our ability to deliver on our land-grant mission and commitment to Minnesota. Importantly, the terms outlined in the proposal agreement on research are vague, but imply a fundamental shift to how research will be administered, having it now flow through Fairview rather than the university, which would have an additional significant financial impact on the medical school and the university's discovery and mission commitment. It is also important for me to reiterate what President Cunningham stated and the information that we walked away from the negotiations. As someone who was in the room, we did not. At the time of the strategic facilitator declared an impasse, we were all told that she would get back to us. She did, with multiple members of our administration meeting with her one-on-one. She then brought UMP and Fairview back together and excluded us from those discussions. Chair Hipsch, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Executive Vice President Goldman, for highlighting the financial impacts of this proposal. Members of the Board of Regents, I would like to touch on an additional topic, the impact of this proposal on the health sciences more broadly. Health and wellness is a team sport. We have 6 outstanding health science schools at the university, including dentistry, medicine, nursing, pharmacy, public health, and vet med, and they are all deeply interconnected. It's important to remember that many University of Minnesota programs are interdisciplinary and that interprofessional training is critical to any healthcare workforce. Consistent with the governor's task force recommendations, the health sciences are advancing our statewide learning health system, building on natural innovations in the ethos of collaboration to advance innovation and evidence-based healthcare delivery models. Our university and clinical teams have a long-standing commitment to interprofessional collaboration around the state in delivering high-quality patient care and in educating the next generation of health professionals. We have made significant progress in dismantling barriers to collaboration and fostering mutual respect across the disciplines. In this instance, however, colleagues from other professions, including those within the physician-led organization, were neither consulted nor seemingly considered in the decision-making process. This raises concerns that the decision may unintentionally undermine the interprofessional education and clinical collaboration already in place and potentially set back our progress in ways that may be lasting and not yet fully understood. The changes proposed by UMP will also impact our schools of health sciences, especially dentistry, pharmacy, and nursing. Given projected workforce shortages in these professions, we cannot allow that to happen. As provost, I'm strongly committed to dialogue and open communication with our health sciences faculty and deans. Since this proposed agreement was announced, I've heard from many of them, and I want to relay some of their concerns here. They have expressed concerns that this new agreement would compromise our research collaborations, substantially weaken the strength of team-based discovery, and diminish our ability to leverage the strengths of each and all of the health sciences school and their deep community-based relationships to address both urban and rural health. As the land-grant university for our state, we must remain resolved to prevent actions that would destabilize our broad interdisciplinary educational, research, and clinical commitments to meet the healthcare needs of all Minnesotans. Thank you, Chair Hibbs.
Chair Hibbs, if I may add just one thing, and thank you very much to the team. I wanted to add for the components that you mentioned there, EVP Goldman, in terms of not walking away from negotiations. We'd be pleased to provide a letter that we wrote to the Attorney General in the middle of September as documentation to the press for that.
Thank you, President. Thank you, President Cunningham and Provost Ritter, Executive Vice President Goldman, and Dr. Gizzi. Now, before we turn to discussion, is there a motion to approve the resolution related to the medical school private practice plan?
So move.
Is there a second? Second. There's been a motion and a second. So I'm going to start with a few comments before I open the floor for discussion. First, President Cunningham, let me express my thanks for your resolve and continued commitment to the mission of the university and your enduring support for our academic health sciences. We are fortunate to have a physician who practiced academic medicine leading the way. We all know that you walked into a mess and that was not your own making. None of us wanted to get to this point, and you and your team have been doing a great job navigating these situations. No one should expect you to correct 30 years of dysfunction in a little over a year. Thank you for all that you have done, and I will continue to do for our great university, for our health sciences and our medical school. The proposed deal between Fairview and UMP management would clearly have a profoundly negative impact on our medical school and our state. As board leadership shared with the Attorney General earlier this week, this agreement strongly oversteps Fairview and UMP management's authority and represents a hostile takeover of the University of Minnesota Medical School. Today, we as a board need to use our constitutional authority to ensure that this does not happen. Our medical school must not be bargained away to pave a path that benefits a few and harms many, including our amazing faculty who come to the university to practice academic medicine. The terms of the proposed agreement were reached without the university's participation. The deal that Fairview and UMP leadership have cut is destabilizing to not only the medical school, but to all of our health science schools. It benefits one health system and one physician group. But our charge is to serve all of Minnesota. For me personally, the lack of any approach to healthcare in rural Minnesota and the significant healthcare needs that I see there each and every day must be addressed. The University of Minnesota mission calls us to serve our entire state, and any clinical agreement must do that. What UMP management and Fairview have negotiated without the university does not. Now, as we turn to discussion, I would like to call on our board vice chairs first. First, Vice Chair Johnson, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Hipsch. And like you, I'm deeply troubled by the actions of UMP leadership and Fairview. As a physician myself and an academic physician, my view is that the proposed agreement does not support the sustainability of our medical school. And that should be deeply concerning to all Minnesotans. It will cause long-term damage to the state's health and to our healthcare workforce development and sustainability, to our economy, and have an outside impact in cities, towns, rural areas, and tribal areas across our state. The agreement will not just impact the medical school, as you've heard, but all our health sciences. Minnesota cannot afford to lose this critical workforce pipeline, given the shortages that we are facing. There are far-reaching implications. As noted, we have 6 schools, and there are only literally a handful of universities in the entire United States that have all 6 of these academic health centers, schools, medicine, nursing, pharmacy, dentistry, public health, and veterinary medicine, all 6. And that's really a critical part of what this university has been doing here for a century and a half. Just this week, our Rochester campus announced plans for a major expansion to address these health professional shortages through new and increased undergraduate programs. These programs can feed into our health sciences schools. This agreement would undermine the ability of the health sciences schools to accept students from programs like those announced in Rochester. It's a growing and vital campus and community. If we allow pathways to our health sciences schools to be closed, we will deprive Minnesota of tremendous talents for decades to come. The University of Minnesota Medical School is not just in the Twin Cities. As a reminder, we have 3 campuses. One in Duluth, which opened more than 50 years ago. It opened in the fall of 1972. St. Cloud, which we celebrated this summer and just opened this fall with our first class there, which we're greatly excited, and the Twin Cities. This ensures that physicians are trained in our state and across our state. And if we want to help rural and tribal and other health care development, we certainly need to train people in Duluth, St. Cloud, as well. But the agreement that's discussed could diminish not only the Twin Cities, but will diminish our ability across all of our medical school campuses. Medical school training across the state is critically needed to address these force shortages that we're currently facing. Well, the majority of our counties in the state are deficient in the number of healthcare workers. That's now. If this happens, it will certainly be much worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Johnson. Vice Chair Wheeler, would you like to make a comment?
I would. Thank you, Chair Hips. Like was stated, I am also deeply troubled by the agreement made between Fairview and the University of Minnesota physicians. I speak from a pretty unique position on this. I'm a physician who's been the CEO of a health system and now is a member of the Board of Regents. Well, understanding the perspectives of each, my duty as the regent is clear: to protect and advance the university so it can best serve all of Minnesotans. Unfortunately, the agreement between Fairview and the University of Minnesota physicians threatens to erode, our very core mission: to train the next generation of health professionals, to make life-saving discoveries, in addition to delivering outstanding patient care. This 3-part mission is fundamental to who we are and is relied upon by all Minnesotans. Although the agreement focuses on clinical operations, and as Provost Ritter highlighted, it places at risk the education and research that make the university and all its 6 schools of health responsive to the needs of Minnesotans. By aligning the University of Minnesota physicians' practice plan with Fairview, the agreement emphasizes Fairview's revenue over teaching and discovery. Unless there are significant revisions to the agreement, it will inevitably reduce protected time for faculty to teach and mentor, weaken the oversight of clinical learning environment, which is required for accreditation, and shift focus away from training future medical professionals and from advancing medical discoveries. Moreover, the agreement between Fairview and the University of Minnesota physicians focuses heavily on financial performance. The proposed metrics that we learned about by which the performance of the University of Minnesota physicians will be judged are solely financial, don't include accountability for training and research. Additionally, allowing Fairview and the University of Minnesota physicians to retain all clinical revenue, funds that have been historically supported teaching and research, it leaves the broader university underfunded and its influence, particularly with no members on any governing board, diminished. These changes all would significantly weaken the university's medical school, related 5 health science schools, and undermine our ability to educate the future healthcare professionals and produce new discoveries that improve the health for all Minnesotans. I'll end by saying, the University of Minnesota to the health of Minnesotans cannot be overstated. I really implore all involved to work quickly towards a more complete and equitable solution. This agreement as structured is not in the best interest, long-term interest of the university or of the state it serves. That concludes my remarks, Chair Hipsch. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Wheeler. Are there any further discussion? Regent Hines.
Thank you, Chair. I've practiced law in the state since 1972 when I graduated from this law school. And bluntly, I've never seen anything that purports to be an agreement be quite so outrageous in the manner in which it was achieved in theory. It comes off to me as a bit of a stunt. It's not really an agreement, it's a nullity. And it's one that really attacks the very fundamental and important interests that I think the Regents and the university and our administration are serving. Academic medicine is really paramount, and this purported agreement is antithetical to that. And I also just want to note, because I know these people, that I am profoundly disappointed with the Attorney General and the Special Representative. I think their conduct here is regrettable at best. At the same time, I want to note over the past weeks that this proceeding has been ongoing, that the university's administration, the president, and her team have just have been remarkably deliberate and calm in the face of really kind of awful circumstances in a way that I think we all can be proud of and the state can be proud of. And I'm really delighted with that work and with that ethic, which has not been reciprocated, in my view. So as the president continues to work closely on this matter day in and day out, I want to reiterate that she has my full support, along with the team. I think the legal work that's been done by the university here is brilliant. And I've seen a lot of legal work in my day. So thank you, President Cunningham.
Thank you, Regent Hines. Regent Turner.
Thank you, Chair Hipsch. So it should be no surprise to anyone that I'm going to come from a little bit different perspective as a still acting bedside care nurse who will actually be working this weekend in the ICU at North Memorial. My perspective is always my patients first. And in this discussions, I've heard a lot of concern about continuing to be there for our patients now, continuing UMP to be able to, and Fairview to administer to our patients. This has been kind of a forefront message that I have gathered. But you know something, as a bedside care nurse, I have to be also concerned about my patients of the future. And my patients in the future are going to require trained physicians. They are going to require trained nurses. And well, I don't do the dentistry stuff, but all of the other healthcare sciences that we train here, the patients of the future, whether four-legged or two-legged, are going to need to be healthcare professionals that we train, 70%. I also want to point out, as far as the nursing school, I cannot let this slide. It is my understanding that 30-some% of the profits that are generated from UMP and Fairview are generated by advanced practice nurses, midwives, nurse practitioners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These positions are at risk, and I can see, just because they're less expensive, I can see in the future that these advanced practice nurses are going to be used even more and more, especially in rural Minnesota. They're the ones who man our nursing homes, our clinics, all over the state. This is at risk. And this is very concerning because ultimately it is our patients who are going to suffer if these workforces are diminished in any way. Thank you. Oh, one other concern? One other concern, and this should be no surprise to anyone. As you all know, I was president of Minnesota Nurses Association for 8 years, and now I am the national president of National Nurses United. We represent 250,000 nurses across the nation. These 70% of these healthcare professionals here in Minnesota are union members. I have a big concern. What does this negotiation mean for our union members? What's going to happen? That hasn't been laid out at all. And I don't often get to go on about the unions, but this is my opportune time to say, what is the impact to our union members? That hasn't been laid out. So if someone could answer that question, I'd be appreciative.
Thank you, Regent Turner. Okay, Regent Verhalen. Did you want your question answered
Chair
now?
Hibbs,
Or?
Eventually.
Eventually, okay.
I think all we can say right now is so little details have been shared with us, but we share the concern that there would be any labor groups or any employees that we cannot yet assess the impacts to, because we have not yet seen the full 30-page agreement, only a short summary of that.
Thank you, President Cunningham. Regent Verhalen.
Yeah, I first want to acknowledge the comments that each of my fellow regents have made to this point. They are spot on and from the heart and appreciated. But I want to reemphasize and take a moment to acknowledge how this agreement and these negotiations, from which the university has been purposefully excluded, is not just a Twin Cities Fairview issue. Our medical school, as Regent Johnson acknowledged, has 3 campuses, Twin Cities, Duluth, and St. Cloud, established and accredited in that order, that provide education and training for physicians, but also for nursing, public health, veterinary services, and even mortuary sciences. All of these campuses and programs are tied to one budget. This university serves more than 1 million patients, including Minnesotans from all 87 counties, and not through only Fairview facilities. It is through the university relationships with various health systems that ensures Minnesotans have access to the cutting-edge life-saving care that the University of Minnesota Medical School has provided for many, many decades. As I sit here today, it appears that this agreement and these negotiations will impact the delivery of medicine to these people and clinical services across the state. The other item that concerns me is the level of academic support that Fairview claims is guaranteed within the agreement. I'm concerned it will not be sufficient to sustain our medical school and these important programs. Of note, it's heavily dependent upon Fairview's financial performance, which one could nicely describe as inconsistent, funding that's speculative at best and destabilizing for our medical school at the worst. All 3 campuses, all programs. And on a fairly personal note, the financial performance is based on the budgeting of Fairview, an organization that has previously announced as purported cost-saving measures in prior press releases, cutting programs and positions that were philanthropically funded by the University of Minnesota's foundation and its critical funding programs, not through Fairview budgeting. I will support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Verhalen. Regent Lugar.
Thank you, Chair Hipsch. I come at this from a bit of a different perspective, and that is from a family of docs who were trained and practiced at the University of Minnesota Medical School. I would also like to acknowledge the comments of my Regent colleagues. I so support what all of you have said. We understand, I certainly understand and share the concerns of our doctors and their patients who have watched these negotiations play out without any clear resolution in sight. We also share, I certainly share with UMP leadership the desire to settle these issues, to remove that uncertainty and anxiety. What I object to, what we object to, is that in that effort to resolve these fears and concerns expeditiously, the terms of the proposed agreement put at risk the long-term well-being of our faculty docs, the students they teach, the research they conduct, the collaborations with our health sciences programs, and really, in the end, the well-being of Minnesotans who rely on the health care provided by our graduates. The University of Minnesota Medical School is the only public institution in our state that delivers medical education, clinical care, and research discovery. And it includes a specific emphasis, as you've heard from others, on rural health. The health of the entire state of Minnesota depends on a strong University of Minnesota Medical School. We have to get this right for our state. And as Provost Ritter referenced, I believe deeply with dialogue, we can work together to find a 3-way agreement to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Lugar. Regent Bergstrom.
Thank you, Chair Hipsch. Thank you, Chair Hipsch. I would like to echo what my peers have shared regarding President Cunningham and the administration's relentless efforts in this matter. Thank you, President Cunningham, for all the work that you have put in to ensure the university's mission is at the core of any agreement. As a executive search consultant, I like to think I have a keen understanding of how how leaders view complex administrative enterprises, the role of fiduciary boards as well, and I take issue with the proposed agreement. As Executive Vice President Goldman outlined, it does not adequately address investment in ongoing maintenance needs. Moreover, Fairview has a track record of consistently and significantly investing in its own programs while under-investing in the UMMC and the services Minnesotans desperately need, including, just to name one, a modernized NICU, which would include space for private conversations between patients and physicians. I'm also troubled by the fact that under the proposed agreement, the university will have no voice in how that additional $50 million investment each year will be made. It will be determined by UMP management in Fairview. Going back to the understanding of a fiduciary board and our mission, that is not something that we can agree with. Finally, deals, mergers, acquisitions, partnerships are, of course, the result of work by executive leadership, which leadership tends to take care of itself in whatever the resulting partnership may look like. That seems to be the case here. Given that we have not seen the details of the proposed deal, echoing to some extent Regent Turner's remarks, my concern, my wonder, is what does the deal do for line physicians and non-physicians as it addresses the financial interests of the UMP management company? Don't need that question answered today because we don't have one. But I will also be supporting this resolution. Thank you, Chair Hipsch.
Thank you, Regent Bergstrom. Regent Farnsworth.
Thank you, Chair Hipsch, and certainly, want to say or acknowledge the importance of what we're discussing today, the importance of what this the whole situation is for the future of our state. Not only as a regent of this university, but as a patient who receives services. I see it from both of those sides. I want to speak very specifically to the resolution in front of us, that we're considering today. And based on the time that I've had to review it, I certainly think that there's a lot of relevant points in here around the current set of circumstances, things such as, and looking very specifically on the last page on the be it further resolved clauses, the 4 bullet points, issues involving the university's branding and trademark implications. Of course, certainly of interest, of high interest to the university, to this board. That's one of our key responsibilities is to protect the brand and trademark implications of the university. I think, there's things such as evaluating what this agreement looks like in the impact it will have on academic and mission support, implications and remedies arising from the actions of UMP's management, and looking at what those may look like. I guess I'm curious, and maybe this is a question for board leadership or for the president. I think it says, be it further resolved that the board reaffirms the president's designated authority to take all necessary and prudent actions related to the foregoing, which is inclusive but not inclusive of but not limited to the following. And then I think particularly in some of these bullet points, it's looking at the resolution in particular, it's a little broader or more open-ended than something I would traditionally be comfortable with, but also, of course, in a governance role, balancing, you always have to balance a set of circumstances that you're under in terms of delegation. So just wondering if leadership or wants to opine on that a little bit as this was created and as this language was decided for this resolution, which does include the statement inclusive of but not limited to, which makes it, to me, read and feel a little bit more open as we proceed forward. So that would be my question.
Could I pass that off to a question to my team?
I'm okay with anyone who wants it, yeah.
I don't know, perhaps Keith?
Yeah,
Or,
well, I can say-
I could call up Doug or Jennifer Losi, if that's appropriate.
In the interim, President Cummings, let me just say the following. I just want to correct one thing for the record. I believe, and Regent Wheeler, if you would corroborate this, but I believe you and General Counsel Peterson met with UMP in Fairview last Friday, and that's the first time that the terms of this were discussed at a high level, broadly, verbally. And then General Counsel Peterson and I met with UMP representatives Tuesday afternoon. We were provided a high-level summary. We were afforded a little less than an hour to look at the terms, a 30-page sheet in detail, but required to give that term sheet back. So at this point, the university has, to the best of my knowledge, not received a copy of that term sheet. So I believe that the resolution was crafted by council so that it gave the board adequate latitude, knowing that we had not reviewed the 30-page document, and council and its advisors and management needed an opportunity to do that properly before coming up with a final set of actions. That's my understanding, Regent Farnsworth.
And I would just add, it would be limited to board policy. I mean, obviously, anything else would be out of limits, so. Regent, or President Cunningham?
Think you don't want to be regent. I'm good. Yeah, I believe the resolution is written, Regent Farnsworth, and we could certainly follow back up with you, but it's reaffirming current, it's reaffirming, and perhaps Brian can answer, this is reaffirming actually what the current authority is and restating it. So this is not a newly delegated authority in any way. And I don't know,
Go ahead.
yeah.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, the president has broadly delegated authority within board policy for the management of the organization. How I would read the language of this particular resolved clause is that the board is setting some priorities that it wishes to have its president take a look at first in this. Because as you'll note, in each case, it's explore, assess, evaluate, comprehensively review. All of these kinds of things would come back to you in subsequent actions, but you are setting a tick list of some priorities that you would like the president to engage in.
Thank you. Regent Johnson.
Just a couple comments, and I want to talk about the facilities briefly. But let me just preface this briefly. We're saying that, one of my great loyalties, lifelong loyalties to the university is based on the fact my father graduated from the College of Pharmacy. And just as a small example of what can be done, he started several hospital pharmacies in the Twin Cities. He was a chief pharmacist. He was a vice president of the Minnesota State Pharmaceutical Association. And had I not worked as a pharmacy tech at age 16, he said, no free lunch, got to get your Social Security card, get a job, and that's what I did. And then you're a different generation, right? But I would never have gone to medical school had I not done that. And so at age 21, I moved to Rochester. I've done my medical training and residency and practiced there for several decades. So suffice it to say, I know what a world-class facilities look like. And 2 or 3 years ago, Regent Chair Hipsch and I were on a tour, and others were likely there as well, of the medical facilities here, and just stunned by how inadequate they were. And again, we've heard some of this, the NICU people, there's no room for families to be there to have discussions. People are waiting in the halls. Residents and students had no place to sit down and write up their, intakes, their histories and physicals of patients. It's just really was stunning. I was absolutely shocked to see what the state of the facilities were in, and in the emergency room, and people waiting for hours, and it was really stunning. And so I think we need to bring out that the contractual agreement that Fairview had in being involved with us is to provide regular and adequate monies so that we could have and maintain world-class facilities at the medical school, and that is a bargain that they did not keep, and it shows. And we'll be visiting today further, so we all have a chance to look further at that. But I think that's really critical, because that's a huge back concern we have that we need to address as well.
And thank you, Regent Johnson. And I was on that tour as well, and it was shocking. And as a small business owner, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call me, what I saw is a lot of opportunity there for improvement. And I was like, wow, we could do a lot with this. We could really make this into something great. And that's what I was excited about, and our rankings were moving up. So, yep. Regent Turner.
I wanted to make one more point, and that's in regards to research and discovery, and going back to our patients. My patients, the ones I serve, and patients all over Minnesota, we depend on the discoveries that are generated at our universities. And nothing was more evident of that than being a COVID ICU nurse that first year, waiting day after day for that COVID vaccine. Knowing, the one thing that would give me comfort was knowing that the whole world was working on it. But that brought home and in January when we got our COVID vaccine, we were grinning ear to ear because we finally had some hope. And that's what the discoveries that go on here give to patients, is hope. And so I'm really concerned that our research and discovery will be affected because it's going to have dire consequences for our patients.
Thank you, Regent Turner. Okay, we're going to vote. All those in favor of the resolution say aye.
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 Okay, all opposed to the resolution say aye. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, there being no other additional business, we stand adjourned.